What's going on, everybody? I hope you're well. Welcome to Metaphysical Bible Study. Today we are decoding Genesis 20 through 22, the story of Isaac and the sacrifice of Isaac. And there's a lot of deep insights that I was able to garner from the decoding and study of this particular text. I'm excited to get into it. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome to Metaphysical Bible Study. You can join us live on Zoom at jointruthseekers.com. That's jointruthseekers with an S.com. And that'll allow you to get access to the recordings from the past chapters that we've decoded. We've started all the way at Genesis 1, and now we're all the way up to Genesis 22. And it's just been an amazing journey. And we've uncovered a lot about the allegorical and metaphorical meanings of these stories. And so with that, we're going to continue our study today with Genesis 20, 21, and 22. Typically, we only like to do one or two chapters, but we like to have a story or a segment that has a definite beginning and a definite end. And so we're going to get through the sacrifice of Isaac today as we explore. So before we get started, we like to get centered and connected with our creator and source, whatever you call it, however you define it. And the way we do that is we just take 5 deep breaths. We go into a little bit of a meditation. We in heaven, and then we exhale. And then we go into the Truth Seekers prayer, which is a prayer that was divinely downloaded into me and that I get to share with you. And then we'll go straight into the text and do our line by line readings. Okay. So to get centered, we know that the breath is something that we do not control. We do not control our breath. As crazy as that sounds, the only way to stop ourselves from breathing is to commit suicide. And so what that lets us know is that something is breathing through us at all times. And I believe that that thing that is breathing through us is God. And so the easiest way to connect back to your source, whatever you call it, however you define it, is by reconnecting with your breath. You don't have to go to any physical space. You don't have to do any particular ritual. All you have to do is breathe. And so we're going to take 5 deep breaths in, and then we call it in heaven, and then we're going to exhale, and then we'll go into the Truth Seekers prayer. So we're going to in heaven for a second, hold for 1, and then release for 5. All right. We'll take the first breath in now. In heaven for 4, fill up your lungs. Hold. Release. In heaven for 4. Hold. Release. In heaven. Hold. Release. Two more. In heaven for 4 seconds. Hold. Release for 5. In heaven one more time for 4. Hold. Release. If we have nothing else to give thanks for, we give thanks for breath. And if you are still breathing at this moment in time, then it means that God is not done with you and that you still have a purpose here on this earth. And our job is to uncover what that is and to live it out. And I believe that we are here to bring heaven, which is our mental experience of life, onto earth, which is our physical experience of life. Anything that we conceive in our mind can actually manifest in our reality. And that's what we get to do in this particular experience that we call life. So before we move forward into Genesis 20, 21, and 22 and decoding that, I'm going to share the Truth Seekers prayer. This was a prayer that came to me as I was embarking on this journey initially by myself, but then something called me to open it up and share this process with as many people as possible. And so the Truth Seekers Prayer is here for those of you who are on social media, for those of you on who are on Zoom with us. I'm going to share my screen now and allow you to see it. I encourage you to take a screenshot of it so that you can have it with you whenever you are going into your own meditation and your own decoding process, because this work that we are doing is courageous. This work that we are doing is courageous, especially when it comes to religion and the pre-programmed ideas of God. To actually go seek for thyself, to not go through a middleman or a middlewoman to get to the truth takes courage, especially when we are exploring God. Somebody said that I misspelled the link. So I'm fixing the link. Join us. I'm fixing the link on social media. Thank you for whoever let me know that. It is fixed now, and I have repinned it. So again, if you want to join us here so that you can see my notes, as my notes literally on the actual text, as well as the Truth Seekers Prayer, then join us at jointruthseekers.com. That's jointruthseekers.com. Okay, so here's the Truth Seekers Prayer. We are truth seekers. We seek the whole truth and nothing but the truth. We know that the truth shall set us free. John 8:32. We believe that when we ask, it shall be given to us. When we seek, we shall find. And when we knock, the door shall be opened unto us. Matthew 7:7. We know that as we sit in the temple of our minds, listening for your voice and asking questions, in that holy place, we shall find understanding and answers. Luke 2:46-47. There is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. Luke 12:2. We know that because the Bible is heavily coded in allegories, Galatians 4:24, similes, Luke 13:18, and parables, Matthew 13:34, many who think they are seeing see not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand, including those who call themselves your disciples, Matthew 13:13. We know to not rely on the letter, but the spirit of the word, for the letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life, 2 Corinthians 3:6. We are meant to study to show thyself approved unto God, rightly dividing the word of truth, 2 Timothy 2:15. Wash our feet, which represents our understanding, so that we may build our church or temple, which is our individual belief system, upon a rock of truth, that we are the sons and daughters of God, Matthew 16:16. May we feel free to renew our minds, Romans 12:2, by destroying and rebuilding our temple over and over and get better and better, leaving no stone standing, Matthew 24:2. We know that when we pray, we shall enter into the closet of our mind, shut the door, and pray to God which is in secret, Matthew 6:6. We know that where 2 or 3 are gathered together in your name, I am is in the midst of them, Matthew 18:20. We pray this metaphysical Bible study blesses, builds, and brings all children of God closer to you, whether inside or outside of a religious context, even if that means wrestling with our concept of you for our blessing, like Jacob in Genesis 32. We love you and thank you with all of our hearts, minds, and souls. Matthew 22:37. Ashe, amen. And so it is. So that is the Truth Seekers Prayer. And I hope that blesses folks and prepares our minds for the study that we are about to embark on. We are going to Genesis 20, 21, and 22 today. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I'm excited to go through this work. I've read it several times. Your homework, for those of you who are new, it is perfectly fine that you have not done the work yet, but in metaphysical Bible study, this is active spirituality, meaning that you are an active participant. You are the leader of your own spiritual journey. You will not show up and just rely on me to do all of the work, to study to show thyself approved and get my cliff notes. And so many people practice spirituality or religion, they practice it passively. If I just show up on Sunday, then that's what constitutes my me checking off the box. But when you actually embark on this spiritual journey and you are a leader, then you realize that you must do the work and that you do not have to go through any middleman, middlewoman, or institution to connect with your creator or your source. And so that is really the practice and the discipline as disciples that we are exploring through Metaphysical Bible Study, where we are going to God directly and asking for divine revelation, divine downloads, and divine insights ourselves. And so I thank you for having the courage to do this work, especially when some of the truths that we find actually challenge what you were taught and programmed in the traditional religious context. And so today, we are exploring Genesis 20, or not exploring, we are decoding Genesis 20, 21, and 22. And we start off with looking at the key persons, places, things, and the questions and situations that don't make sense that we have as a result of this text. And so whether you are on social media or you are here in Zoom with us, then go ahead and let's start with the persons in these stories. Who are the people? Because here we decode the names of the people, we decode the names of the places, and we find the metaphorical meaning of the things that are mentioned, right? And then we list out our questions and we ask for insight and answers from the Most High. And so let's start off with who are the characters in Genesis 20, 21, and 22? Who are the characters in Genesis 20, 21, and 22? So we see Abraham, we see Sarah, Hagar, Abimelech, Isaac, right? Angel of God. Okay. Nahor, Milcah, Pico, Philistines. Cool. Now, what are the places? What are the places that came up in Genesis 20, 21, and 22? What you'll notice, folks, is that all of these places and people, their Hebrew meanings actually add a lot of color and context to the story and help you understand the allegorical meaning of these stories. So we have Beersheba, we have Gerar, we have Negab, we have Moriah, we have Kadesh, Canaan, Shur, and South Country. Okay. What things came up? What things, as in items, came up? Haran. What things came up? Sheep. We have lamb, ram, seed, altar, water, archer, gate, dream, fire, wood, young lads. Okay. Covenant. All right. Now, what questions came up for you as you read this, or what things didn't make sense if you were to take them literally? What questions came up, or what things did not make sense if you were to take them literally? Does God tempt us? Does God tempt us? Seems, according to the story, that Abraham was tempted, right? What is a bondwoman versus handmaid? Okay. Why does Abraham keep calling Sarah his sister? Why does Abraham keep calling Sarah his sister? Great question. Second time, right? Why put bread skin of water on her shoulder? Why give her bread skin of water on her shoulder? Okay. why would God, this is the biggest one here, why would God have Abraham sacrifice his son, Isaac? That's the big question, right? Do we think that honestly that God was testing Abraham's obedience? That's what they'll tell you in church, is that, oh, this was just to test Abraham's obedience. I don't serve a God that has to play in that way, that has to test my obedience by causing me to sacrifice my offspring. If God ever gave me a message to sacrifice Jada, I wouldn't do it. And some people say, oh, well, you just don't have the obedience of Abraham. I guess you don't either, because you wouldn't do that to your own seed. You really think that that's what this story is really all about? That God would have Abraham sacrifice his own child to show him that he loved God? That makes no sense whatsoever. But of course, when you read the Bible literally, these are the things that they tell you. There's not one human being that I know would sacrifice their child in the name of God. Not one. Oh, well, I guess we're not as obedient as Abraham. Nah. It's not even programmed in your DNA to do such a thing. Okay? Why did Ishmael mock Isaac? Why did Ishmael mock Isaac? Okay. Okay. All right. These are great questions. All right. So if you had to identify what this story was about in one word, in one or a few words, this particular story, what would you say this story is really all about? Is it about obedience, as they would typically teach in the church that this story is about? Faith? I see fulfillment of covenant. Andrea. Fulfillment of covenant. Anybody else? If you had to summarize this, I see another covenant, trusting God. Trusting God. What else? If you had to summarize this story, putting God first. God first. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's get into it. So we're going into line by line reading right now of Genesis 20, 21, and 22. Again, if you're on social media, you can go to jointruthseekers.com. It is pinned, jointruthseekers.com, to follow along with the text. So Genesis chapter 20, verse 1. And Abraham journeyed from thence towards the south country and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. So Kadesh, if you look up the Hebrew definition, means holy or sacred. Shur means wall, bull, or to be raised, and Gerar means dragging or sojourning. So you see Gerar means dragging or sojourning, and typically what you'll see is when you decode the names of people and places, you will typically see that same word integrated into the actual text. So you see sojourned in Gerar, and Gerar happens to mean dragging or sojourning. Okay. So verse 2, and Abraham said to Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. Said of Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, right, sent and took Sarah. So this is the second time that Abraham has called Sarah his sister. And we haven't come up with a real reason why from a decoding or metaphorical standpoint. But if we know Abraham to be a representative of the conscious mind, Sarah being the subconscious mind, and God being the superconscious mind, or the angel of God being the superconscious mind, there seems to be a detachment or a disjoining between the conscious and the subconscious mind. And the conscious mind is willing to give up the subconscious mind to something else, not to God, the superconscious, but to another king. And Abimelech's name means my father is king, or Melech is father. Okay, so this same exact story occurred in Genesis 12:2, where Abraham gave up Sarah to Pharaoh. Okay, gave up Sarah to Pharaoh. Another metaphorical or interpretation is that Abraham is mind, Sarah is spirit, and Abraham, we know that Egypt represents body consciousness. So giving up spirit to the body as opposed to the other way around. We know that the proper order is supposed to be spirit leads the mind, which leads the body. But oftentimes the way we operate as human beings is we let the body lead us, right? And when the body leads us, that's physical illness. When the mind leads us, that's mental illness. And ultimately, we want the right order, which is being led by spirit. And we've seen that play out in many of the stories, putting spirit, spiritualizing everything that we do. Okay. In verse 3, but God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, thou art but a dead man for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. So this is very interesting. In this particular verse, how does God speak to man? In this verse, how does God speak to man? Through dream. So my question to you, if Moses actually wrote this, how did Moses hear what God said to Abimelech in a dream? If Moses wrote this, right? How did Moses, who's not even born yet, hear what God said to Abimelech in a dream? Make that make sense for me. Okay. Moses heard, behold, thou art but a dead man for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. Now, the other thing that we did not mention when we were asking what does not literally make sense is why is God coming at Abimelech when it is Abraham and Sarah who supposedly lied about their relationship? Why would God go after Pharaoh in the previous version when it was Abram and Sarai who actually lied about their relationship? Why is it that God, going forward, when we get to Moses and Pharaoh, why is it that God would harden Pharaoh's heart? This is just interesting. If we take this literally, this does not make sense. Okay? But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? 5, said he unto me, she is my sister, and she, even she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. Okay. Verse 6, and God said unto him in a dream, again, yea, I know thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. So what I'm seeing here is that God can stop or start sin. According to how this is written, God can start or stop sin. It says, I withheld thee from sinning against me. So that actually gives man no choice. If in the future, when we get to Moses in Exodus, God hardened Pharaoh's heart, then that gives man no power in decision-making power and no self-efficacy. That would mean that all this is fate and that there's this larger entity that is just controlling every single thing, including our decision-making. And therefore, there would be no choice, right? And therefore, no freedom. And if you don't have the freedom to actually choose, then you actually don't have the freedom to love. You would actually be forced to. And that's not the kind of experience that I am having of life or that I want to experience. You'd be forced. And it would all be fate. And then what would this whole experience be for? Therefore, I suffered thee not to touch her. And so Abimelech is basically saying, I was innocent. I didn't know. They lied to me, but you're coming at me. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay. Verse 7. Now, therefore, restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. So now I need the person who lied about their relationship to pray for me in order for me to be forgiven. Are y'all seeing where this is off? Are you seeing where this is off? Now I need him who lied to me because he has a relationship with you to pray for me to be forgiven when it's he who lied. This is backwards. This is why literally it does not make sense. Literally is not how it's meant to be interpreted. Okay. And if thou restore her not, know thou that thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine. Verse 8. Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their ears, and the men were sore afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham, and you see the word or the prefix ab in front of Abimelech and Abraham. Ab means father, Abba, father. So again, we are breaking down the language and looking at the definitions. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said unto him, what hast thou done unto us? And what have I offended thee? Thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin. Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not be done. Verse 10. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? Okay. Verse 11. And Abraham said, because I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. All right. So what do we know fear to be? What is the acronym for fear, family? What is the acronym for fear? False evidence appearing real. So watch this, y'all. Here in verse 10, it said, and Abimelech said unto Abraham, what sawest thou? What sawest thou? So we know we are referencing the eyes. So basically, what Abraham is saying, surely the fear of God is not in this place. So Abraham, the conscious mind, which relies on the five senses, right, saw and then thought falsely and projected his fear onto others. This is an example of fear or false evidence appearing real. This is what the conscious mind has the power to do. Abraham projected his fear onto other people and then thus demonized them. But the fear, the source of the fear was in who? The source of the fear was in Abraham. And it was a false fear because Abimelech was innocent and had a pure heart. And we can do the exact same thing to other people, especially people of African descent. In this country, we have people, counterparts, brothers, who fear us and thus project their fears on us and therefore have an invalid experience or an inauthentic experience of who we are because of their own fear. Okay? So this is how the conscious mind works. Abraham representing the mind or the conscious mind, this is how the conscious mind works. And what we are seeing is how fear can actually cause confusion. Verse 12, and yet indeed she is my sister. She is not his sister. She is his niece. If you look at the lineage up here, Terah gave birth to Nahor, Abraham, and Haran. Sarah is the daughter of Haran. So Abraham is Sarah's uncle. Abraham is Sarah's uncle slash niece. Okay, so she is not his sister, yet he continues to say this. Okay, daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my daughter of my, but not the granddaughter of my mother. Okay, and she became my wife. Okay, that is the truth. Based on the lineage, this is the truth. Verse 13, and it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, this is thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me at every place whither we shall come, say of me, he is my brother. So Abraham is the one that told Sarah, when the conscious mind does have the power to lead the subconscious mind, but we also see examples in this narrative and in this story where the subconscious mind is actually leading the conscious mind. And so when Sarah tells Abraham to go conceive with Hagar, that is the subconscious mind leading, right? but the conscious mind has executive power to lead. And so he is the one, or the conscious mind is the one that was actually leading the subconscious mind in this particular example. Verse 14. And Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants and gave them unto Abraham and restored him Sarah, his wife. So again, why is Abraham blessed for misleading? That doesn't make any sense. Why is Abraham being blessed for lying? We saw the same thing when he did it to Pharaoh. He left with cattle, with gold, for lying, for deceit. And the entity that was punished was the one that he lied unto. That literally does not make sense if we all serve what we call a righteous God. Verse 15, and Abimelech said, behold, my land is before thee, dwell where it pleaseth thee. Verse 16, and unto Sarah he said, behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver, and behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes unto all that are with thee, and with all others, thus she was reproved, right? So we see, we saw the word saw, right? We saw the word saw before, and now we see covering of eyes. So we could be exploring how our eyes actually deceive us from seeing the truth, and how we can take the inner fear that is within us and project it through our eyes, right? And then create an experience that creates confusion. And so verse 17, so Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. Verse 18, for the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Okay. Again, why was Abimelech in his kingdom punished for deceit by supposedly God's child, Abraham, right? So that is chapter 20. Okay. Now we're going into chapter 21, Genesis chapter 21, verse 1. Now we're getting into the birth of Isaac. We know that Sarah has been barren, right? She's had to conceive through her handmaid Hagar, and Ishmael was born. And so now we are going, but she has still been promised a child, even in her old age, even in her husband's old age, okay? And so now we get into that. Chapter 21, and the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. So this is basically the Lord, or God, keeping its word. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, and at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham, verse 3, called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac, right? What does Isaac mean, family? What does Isaac mean? Isaac means he laughs. He laughs. Now, there are two types of laughter. Two types of laughter. What are the two types of laughter? What are the two types of laughter? Laughter of doubt. Right? And laughter of joy. Okay? Laughter of doubt and laughter of joy. Okay? So let's just hold that. Verse 4, and Abraham circumcised his son, because that was one of the rituals that was given. But last week we uncovered that circumcision is not the actual cutting away of foreskin physically when taken literally. Just like when it says go pray in the closet, it does not mean that you go literally into a closet and pray. It means going into the closet of your mind, right? When it says God spoke or God walked, etc., it's not talking about physical. We personify God. We anthropomorphize God. We give God human characteristics, but we are God. John 10:34. Just in case you were wondering, is it not written in your law? I've said ye are gods. That's from Jesus directly, by the way. They don't preach that on Sundays. Okay, so Abraham circumcised his son Isaac. So we know that circumcision is not the cutting away of actual foreskin. Circumcision is the cutting away of fleshly desires. and making sure that as we move through this experience called life, that we are led by the Spirit, because we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. This body is the only limitation that we truly have. This body is the only limitation that we truly have in this experience. It's our bodysuit. It's our avatar, right? And so when we cut away the flesh, right, the fleshly desire in the way we relate to one another, right, in the way we eat, and we are led by spirit, we will have a different experience of life than if we are led by the flesh. So that is what the true meaning of circumcision is really all about. And our circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 years old, and God, as God had commanded him. Verse 5, and Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, God hath made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. Okay, with me. And verse 7, and she said, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age. Okay, so Sarah is doing exactly what Rebecca will later do with Isaac's son, Jacob and Esau. So when you understand these stories keep playing out over and over and over again, there's so many repeated stories with the same exact story with different characters. And we also are fully aware that the story of Jesus is actually a remix of many of these stories into one single character. And that's actually very easy to write. If I have the Old Testament stories, and I know that these stories have been embedded as archetypal stories in the human consciousness, then if I can create a story of one individual character that has elements and ingredients of all these other stories integrated into it, then this story, one story that I create, is going to be very believable. Now, what they will tell you religiously is that Jesus is the fulfillment of all of the Old Testament. But it is very easy to write a second chapter when you have the first chapter. It's very easy to say that, oh yeah, he fulfilled that prophecy there. It's very easy to, with the stroke of a pen, write that into the story. We have no physical evidence or archetypal, archaeological evidence of any of it. All we have is the stroke of pens, characters, Hebrew letters, Aramaic letters on scrolls. To be honest, that's not even evidence. Anybody can write anything. That's not actual evidence. Just because somebody wrote something, you found an old scroll, does not make it actual evidence. Right? So Sarah is doing what Rebecca will later do, and I'm just giving you an illusion that this story is going to repeat itself. She's doing what Rebecca would later do with Isaac's son, Jacob and Esau, okay? So by making sure that the birthright goes to the youngest. Later on, you're going to see as we get into, I think, Genesis 27, 28, when we get into Jacob and Esau, Rebecca does the exact same thing that Sarah has done, making sure that the birthright goes to the youngest. The birthright is not supposed to go to the youngest. The birthright is supposed to go to who? The oldest, okay? Through coercion, right? Esau was the hunter like Ishmael. Esau was the sojourner like Ishmael. So you see these parallels, these stories continue to repeat themselves. They're trying to tell us something. And we know that the subconscious mind is programmed by what? We know that the subconscious mind is programmed how? Through repetition, family. Through repetition. So we are trying to understand what is the program happening here? What are they trying to code into our minds? And what can we learn from it if this book is really a manual for how to use our minds, right? So verse 8, and the child grew and it was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, right, the Egyptian, which she had born unto Abraham, mocking, right? So Ishmael was mocking Isaac, according to this story. Now, Okay. So first, listen, Sarah was first jealous, right? That she had a son. And then Sarah commanded Abraham to lay with Hagar. Subconscious mind commanded conscious mind to lay with body, because we know that Egypt represents body consciousness. So subconscious mind commanded by conscious mind to lay with body, and then there bear Ishmael. So first and foremost, Sarah is jealous that Hagar was able to give birth, right? Because spirit has difficulty giving birth. We learned last week that spirit has no physical existence. And so spirit representing Sarah was actually jealous of Hagar, who represents body consciousness, or Egypt, the Egyptian, that the conscious mind could give birth to something physical, which the spirit could not, right? So this is where you have Son of Man, and then this is where you have Son of God. Son of Man is through the body, Son of God is through the spirit. And now that Sarah has given birth to Isaac, she is still jealous. Spirit in this particular essence is still jealous, even though she is now manifested physically. Okay. So verse 10, wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. And verse 11, and the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. These are Abraham's sons. They've come from his seed. The conscious mind planted in the body, the conscious mind planted in spirit. Actually, honestly, we have no indication. We have no indication, family, that Abraham knew or lay with Sarah. If we go back to verse 2, it said, for Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age. There is no, when we see language of Hagar, it says Abraham went in to Hagar. We have no conception. Why? Because spirit is learning how to manifest physically without physical action. There is no scripture that says that Abraham lay with Sarah. No scripture saying, we can assume that Abraham lay with Sarah. Why? Because now the spirit is learning how to manifest physically without physicality. This whole world is made up of nothingness. That which is seen is made up of that which is unseen. That which is seen is made up of that which is unseen. 99% of an atom is empty. It's nothingness. That is spirit. We think that we are in this 100% physical experience, and it's not. Most of the atoms and the cells are empty. They're filled with this ether, this spirit, which is the universal substance of this reality. Okay? So Abraham is now torn because he has a son through physical manifestation, through the body, through Hagar, and he has a son through spirit. And spirit is saying, get rid of the son that was born through the body, right? Verse 12, and God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, and because of thy bondwoman, in all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. Okay, so we know that spirit always trumps body. The spirit, and here's how you know. When your physical body dies, what will still exist? When your physical body dies, what will still exist? Your spirit. The spirit never dies. Energy is never created or can't be created or destroyed. It just is. It just is. So it will always win. Okay? So verse 13, And also of the son of thy bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. Verse 14, and Abraham rose up early. Again, we always see rose up, went down, etc. South country. We see this journey of the spirit, of consciousness. We see this journey of up and down and up and down, up, went up a mountain, went down here, went up. We see this. So Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water, right? Hopefully it's some Polar Spring or some, hopefully it was alkaline. I'm joking, y'all. And it gave it to Hagar. You telling me that a man has child with two women and he's just gonna kick one to the curb because the second one said do so and because God said do so, and gonna leave them with a bottle of water and some bread, kick rocks? Y'all taking that story literally? If this was a Jerry Springer episode, y'all would be mad at Abraham. That no good for nothing, this and that, you snapping your necks. But oh, because it's in the Bible, it's all good. Because God said it's all good, right? See, this is what the problem when you take things literally. This is not meant to be taken literally. This is not a story about a deadbeat dad. Because if we take this literally, this would be a deadbeat dad right here. Okay? So we have to look beyond the actual literal. The letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life. The physical killeth, but the spirit giveth life. So we are looking for the deeper meanings in these stories, okay? So we know that Hagar means flight, to be dragged off, to be put into service. Put it on her shoulder, and the child, and sent her away, and she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Beersheba is well of the oath, or well of seven, okay? Verse 15, and the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. Verse 16, and she went and sat her down over against him, a good way off, as it were a bow shot. A bow shot. Okay, I underline that word. You'll see the connection in just a second. For she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lift up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad. Now, hear this. She is the one that's weeping. I just noticed this. I'm not sure what it means yet. She is the one that's weeping, but God heard the voice of the lad, which was Ishmael, not Hagar. And the angel of God called to Hagar out of the heaven and said unto her, what aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Verse 18, arise, lift up again, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. Basically, God is going to provide the child support. God going to provide the child support. All right. Grandpa going to provide the child support because the deadbeat dad, Abraham, he's out the picture. He done cuffed up by some toxic woman named Sarah. This is if you read the story literally, right? Oh, but because it's in the Bible, it's all good. Abraham's not a deadbeat daddy. Abraham doesn't have multiple women. You told him to sleep with this other woman. They gave birth. Now you mad at her for giving birth when you told him to do that. And now you giving birth too, magically. Abraham didn't even lay with you. You have a child now, and you still mad at her. Come on, y'all. That's some toxic stuff, if we take it literally. This is better than a Jerry Springer episode, all right? Sarah's tripping, okay? So, verse 19, and God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, okay? And she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad drink, okay? Why is water there? We talked about this last week, because we know that the body is what? It's 70% water. So the body needs water. Sarah doesn't need water. She's spirit, right? But we know that the body needs water, right? And so this is the same as Genesis 16:7, right? She couldn't see in despair, right? Our eyes deceive us. and cause us to sin. The well was there. Listen to this very carefully. God opened her eyes and she saw a well of water. So what that means is the well of water was there. But when we are in despair, family, we can't see clearly. When we are in despair, we can't see clearly what is actually there, what resources that we actually have to solve the problem that is right in front of us. And so we have to lift ourselves up, arise and lift ourselves up in order to see clearly. Okay. In verse 20, and God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. So you see this word archer, right? We know that to sin means to what? Miss the mark in archery. And if we go back up to verse 16, we see a bow shot. So we see the poetry of the writer here actually creating an allusion to what Ishmael would ultimately become, an archer. An archer can shoot a bow, not just at a tree or at a target, but also in terms of hunting. We also know that Esau, the firstborn, was a what? A hunter. We know that Esau was a hunter. So this is a setup for when we get to Genesis 27 and 28. Okay, so we know that sin is to miss the mark in archery, and Ishmael is the son of man, flesh, 5 senses based, and the flesh being the cause of sin. Being driven by the flesh is actually what causes us sin. Now, we're not against the flesh. We are so grateful for the flesh and the body because our body is our temple. How can you be against the flesh, but then also say my body is my temple? That's where a lot of people are torn. Oh, I hate the flesh, but my body is my temple. Without the body, I cannot be here as a spirit. I cannot have this experience. So we have to learn how to become one with the body again, spirit leading mind and mind leading body. But it is out of order. It is out of order. So in verse 21, and he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran. Paran means glorious or to glorify. We also know that prana in Sanskrit means life force energy. And his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So Ishmael, coming from an Egyptian woman, right, now marrying and doubling down with an Egyptian woman, where she was from, body consciousness, right? In verse 22, and it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol means mouth of all, edge of completion, the chief captain of his host spake. So you see Phicol means mouth of all, and then right after that, you see the word spake or speak or spoke unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. Okay. Verse 23. Now, therefore, swear unto me here by God that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. Verse 24. And Abraham said, I will swear. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of the a well of water, which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. So now Abimelech's servants are acting violently, right? And verse 26, and Abimelech said, I wot not who hath done this thing, neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I of it, but today. Verse 27, and Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, basically gave Abimelech back his own stuff, okay? And both of them made a covenant. Verse 28, and Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? Verse 30, and he said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. Verse 31, wherefore he called that place Beersheba, because there they swear both of them. Again, Beersheba means well of 7 or well of the oath or promise. And thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up, and Phicol, chief captain of his host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. Verse 33, and Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in Philistine land for many days. So what keeps getting in trouble? What keeps getting in trouble? So ask ourselves this question, y'all. What keeps getting us in trouble for things that it did not know? What keeps getting, as human beings in this experience, what keeps getting us in trouble for things it did not know it was doing, or even when the intention or the heart is pure? What keeps getting us in trouble for things it did not know it was doing, or even when the intention of the heart is pure? What does pico mean, y'all? Mouth of all. It is our mouth. Our mouth and our words get us into trouble for things we did not know, even when our intention is pure. Pico means mouth of all. We see the word swear, a voice of the lad, he laughs. All of these things are coming from the mouth. And so over time, we've been able to connect different stories to parts of the body. And what I see here is the mouth. Why would pico come out of nowhere? What is the significance of pico in this particular story? It's the mouth of all, right? And we know that our word shall never return void. Now we have Abimelech who said, my intentions, I'm innocent. My heart is pure. But even still, what we know in our human experience is that even when our intentions are pure, even when we're speaking from our heart, we can be misunderstood. We can be misunderstood. Misunderstood good intentions. So that's just something that I noticed. And so we have to be very mindful of our word. All right. Now we're getting into the sacrifice of Isaac. We're going into chapter 22, Genesis chapter 22. Okay. Again, why would God give a man a son and then require that man to sacrifice his son to show God how much he loved him? That makes no sense. If anything told me to sacrifice my daughter, I would not do it. If anything told almost all of you, and I'm gonna say almost all of you, to sacrifice your child, you would not do it. People want to frame this as a story of obedience and of faith. No, there's something deeper here. And that's what we need to explore. Chapter 22, verse 1. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham. So wait a second. Now God is tempting me? God is tempting me? Have you ever tempted your child? Have you ever tempted your child? And said unto him, Abraham. And he said, behold, here I am. You see, I highlighted that. Here I am. Why? Why did he say, here I am? Okay. And verse 2, he said, take now thy son, thine only son Isaac. Time out. What's wrong with this statement? What's wrong with this statement? All of a sudden, Abraham only has one son. Thy only son Isaac. What happened to Ishmael? What happened? Okay. What happened to Ishmael? Whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah. Moriah means Yah is awesome. Yah is teacher, place of reverence or fear of Yah, seen by Yah. Okay. And offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of. Okay. Now, verse 3. And Abraham rose up. Again, we see up, right? Early in the morning, again, and saddled his ass. Okay. What does this mean? Where else do we see the saddling of an ass, y'all? Where else do we see the saddling of an ass? We see it when Jesus is going into Jerusalem. So what does this really mean? Why does this keep coming up? Again, remember, I told you these Old Testament stories are all weaved in to one narrative and one character of Jesus in subtle ways. This represents the saddling of the animalistic nature, the doing of the animalistic nature. Abraham rose up in consciousness and at that level had subdued the animalistic nature of man. Okay, and he took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son and clave the wood of the burnt offering. Now this is I'll get to it in just a second. And Isaac and his son and clave the wood for the burnt offering and rose up and went unto the place which God had told him. Family, I told you to do this as homework. I told you to do this as homework. There is a parallel between Isaac and Jesus. The sacrifice of Isaac and the crucifixion of Jesus. Listen carefully. Listen carefully for the parallels and then ask why. Why is this story told over and over and over again? Listen carefully. Okay? I have a T-chart, which I'm going to show you in just a second, but I want you to listen carefully for the parallels between the sacrifice of Isaac and the crucifixion of Jesus. Okay? So basically, what is happening is take that which you love most and spiritualize it, because smoke doesn't really have physical nature. Anytime we're talking about burnt offerings, we're talking about spirit. It is getting rid of the physical nature of the thing through fire, through purification, and turning it into spirit. What does fire do? Fire purifies. Fire purifies. So when we talk about spiritualizing something, burnt offerings in the Bible is representative of spiritualizing something. Okay? So take that which you love the most and spiritualize it. We talked about spiritualizing things, everything in our life last week. Are you willing to give up your marriage, career, your kids, your life, and money and to God out of obedience and awareness of the source of all those things? I'm going to ask you that again. Are you willing to give up your marriage, your career, kids, life, and money to God, not by killing it, not in the way this story exaggerates, out of obedience and awareness of the source of all of those things? That is the challenge that we all have. Are you willing to sacrifice those things in order to be in oneness with the source of all those things? We grip on to these things, but what's more important than gripping onto these things on a human level is to be connected to the source of all those things. If you're connected to the source of all those things, then you never have to worry about those things. Okay? So remember, Isaac means he laughs. And there are 2 types of joy. There's laughter out of doubt and there's laughter out of joy. So the things that bring you the most joy, right? Are you willing to sacrifice those? Are you willing to sacrifice the things that bring you the most joy? Verse 4, and then on the 3rd day, what day was Jesus lifted up? What day was Jesus lifted up, y'all? On the 3rd day. You see these parallels? And Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. Verse 5, and Abraham said unto his young men, abide ye here with the asses, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. Okay? What did Jesus tell his disciples do? Jesus told his disciples when he went to pray in the garden, he said, you stay here. I will go and pray. You stay here. I'm going up to the mountain, the Garden of Gethsemane. But you stay here. You see the parallel? Okay. Verse 6, and Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering. What was Jesus carrying to Golgotha? What was Jesus carrying to Golgotha? A wood cross. And laid it upon Isaac his son, and he took the fire in his hands, fire representing spirit, and the knife representing separation, cutting off. Just like circumcision, cutting off. You need something to cut off. And they, and if you remember correctly, what did the Roman soldiers do to Jesus, y'all? What did the Roman soldiers do to Jesus? Pierced him. Pierced him. Are you willing to cut away and burn and sacrifice everything you put your hope and trust in God for something greater? You think you're holding on to something, but if you actually sacrifice that something, there's actually more available unto you. But if you just want to settle for what you think is your blessing, you're literally cutting your blessing off. You're literally blocking your blessing. The greatest blessing is to be in alignment with the source of all. Okay. And they went both of them together, and Isaac spake unto Abraham his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? So we see here I am again, right? And Abraham said, my son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. Again, this is used by Christians as an allusion to Jesus. Verse 9, and they came to the place which God had told of him, and Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. Okay? Family, if we read this literally, God does not need us to kill its own creation to be pleased. What we need to kill is some of our man-made creations that have become our gods. God does not need us to kill its own creations, whether that is Isaac, Abraham's son, or cattle, or anything of that nature, to be pleased. However, what we need to kill is some of our man-made creations that have become our gods. Verse 10, and Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. In verse 11, the angel of the Lord called unto him out of the heaven being our what? Our mental experience of life, out of his mind, out of his conscience, and said, Abraham, Abraham. He said, here I am. This is the third time we hear this text, this quote, here I am. Watch this, family. At the start of the journey, Abraham said to God, here I am. Next time he said, here I am, he's saying it to Isaac on the journey. And then at the destination, he's saying, here I am to the angel. Well, God represents what? The Father. Isaac represents what? The Son. And the angel represents what? The Holy Spirit. Abraham is in a space where he's able to occupy all three spaces. As the father of multitudes, as the Son, and the Spirit. He's not in one particular realm anymore. When you're willing to sacrifice it all, the material, carnal thoughts, carnal things, you can now occupy all three at once. And this is the level of Christ consciousness or God consciousness. When you are able to be all three at the same time. This Christ consciousness equals ability to be all three at the same time. You're neither here nor there. You recognize that you were the father of your experience. You recognize yourself in your offspring of your experience. And you recognize yourself as the unseen that is bringing the entire experience together. You're not just in one realm. Some people are so focused on their physicality. You see it on Instagram all the time. Focus on the physical, 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 physical. But spirit might be empty, right? Then you see some people who are so spiritual, that they give no attention to their body or the fact that they are mother, father of their own experience, right? And so it's actually in order: Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Here I am, here I am, here I am. I am all of them. Not one or the other. I am all of them. So, verse 12. And he said, lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for I know that thou fearest God. I don't want to be God-fearing. I want you to wipe that language out of your vocabulary. I don't want my daughter to fear me. What I want to be is God-hearing. I don't want my daughter to fear me. I don't believe that God wants you to fear it. Fear is not of God. I want to be God-hearing. When I want to hear God, I want to know what God's will is for my life, and I want to move in accordance with that. I don't want to do anything out of fear. Hearing is out of love. Out of love and alignment, and a seeking to be in alignment and do good. Fear is not doing wrong. I don't want to do wrong. These are two different vibrations. Out of fear, okay? I want to be God-hearing. I don't use the word God-fearing anymore. I want to be God-hearing. The Old Testament God or version of God that was written was one to be feared. I just want to be God-hearing. That's more of the New Testament God. Okay? So, are you willing to sacrifice your creations to be in alignment with the Creator? Your son is your material offspring or creation you think you'll live on through. Abraham thought he was going to live on through Isaac, right? We have 4 ways of leaving our legacy: baby bodies, our bodies of work, institutional bodies. But the greatest way to actually leave your legacy is giving your body in service, giving up this physical body in service to others. Are you willing to sacrifice the creation, your creations, to be in alignment with the Creator? Your son is your material offspring or creation that you think you'll live on through. Baby bodies, family, is the easiest way to leave your legacy. Having children can happen in 5 minutes if you're not careful. Now, raising them is a completely different thing, but having children can happen just like that. That's the easiest way to leave your legacy. What we are being called forth is to go beyond that. I don't care if you don't have kids. I don't care how long your resume is. I don't care if you created a company or a nonprofit. Did you leave your body in service to other people? Because when you do that, you remain in people's hearts. I don't care what your bank account was when you died. Guess what? Nobody knows and nobody will care what your bank account was when you die. Did you leave your body in service to other people? How many people remember you in their heart because of your presence in their life? Are you willing to sacrifice everything else to give your body in service? So in verse 12, it said, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thy only son from me. We already know that this is not true. We know that Ishmael was also Abraham's son. But this goes to John 3:16. You see how they took the Old Testament and tried to weave little versions of it into the New Testament? Because John 3:16, probably the most famous quote in the Christianity religion is, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Isn't that the same thing that's happening right here? Even though it's not true because Abraham had Ishmael. So that's where the story does not align. Okay. So verse 13, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket of his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering, that in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord, it shall be seen. So Jehovah Jireh means the Lord will provide. Verse 15, and the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of the heaven the second time, and said, by myself I have sworn, saith the Lord, for because thou hast done this thing, and it has not withheld thy son, thy only son, again, which is not true. Why would God lie? Okay, why would God lie? So we know that's not accurate. That's man manipulation right there. Verse 17, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven. We already talked about stardust before. God said you'll be outnumbered the dust and you will outnumber the stars. When you get to that you add those two together, that is stardust. And everything that is in us as human beings, all of the chemicals that are in us as human beings are the same things that are in stardust. So we see that come back in the sand, which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. Verse 18, and thy seed shall, in thy seed all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. Again, that's God hearing. In verse 19, so Abraham returned unto his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt in Beersheba. Notice Abraham returned to his young men. It doesn't say anything about Isaac. Notice it doesn't say anything about Isaac returning. Okay. Just curious. It doesn't say Abraham and Isaac returned to the young men. It says just Abraham returned unto his young men. Verse 20, and it came to pass after these things that it was told Abraham, saying, behold, Milcah, she hath also borne children unto thy brother Nahor, who's the firstborn, and Buz his brother, and Kemuel, the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Jilaph, and Bethuel, and Bethuel begat Rebekah, and these 8 Milcah did bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Reumah, and she bare also Teba, and Gaham, and Thahash, and Makkah. All right. And so Rebekah is Isaac's future wife, who would give him Jacob and Esau, and she is his cousin and Abraham's nephew daughter. Okay. And so I decoded all the names there that were listed, and I'm still looking for the synergy that is there and what these names actually mean. Okay. But if we go back to the story, okay, are you willing to cut away and burn and sacrifice everything you put your hope in to trust God for something greater? You realize, family, to find a woman or a man who you are going to live the rest of your life with, you may have to go through a period where you have to cut off women and men. To find a woman or man, you may have to go through a period where you cut off woman and man. Banks want to lend to people who do not need money. Banks want to lend to people who do not need money. So getting to a space of not needing is actually what brings and attracts all of the things that you desire. But you have to be willing to sacrifice that thing which you think you need. To attract something, you must detach from it. Some of you try to attract things into your life by being attached to it and focusing all your energy on it. But what you're focused on is the absence of it, not the actuality of it, not the presence of it. So Abraham, in this allegory, was willing to sacrifice that which brought him joy. He laughs, Isaac. He was willing to sacrifice Isaac, right? And in doing so, that willingness, he didn't have to sacrifice Isaac, but it was the willingness to sacrifice Isaac that allows Abraham to be the father of all 50% of modern day religions, Abrahamic religions. God's plan is bigger than your plan. But if you are so fixated on your small plan and you're holding on to your small plan, God's grand plan will not unfold. Abraham thought that his lineage would only go on through this one seed, Isaac, and through Ishmael. They just threw Ishmael out. Now they're calling Isaac his only son, right? That was Abraham's limited perspective. But God had a grander plan for Abraham where his seed would multiply as much as the sand, as much as the stars, as much as the dust, right? For those of you struggling with money and abundance right now, you realize that you have to sacrifice money to make more money? Oh my God. Do you realize that you have to sacrifice money to make more money? You see the parallel? You have to sacrifice that which you think you want and that you've been holding on to in your savings account to actually receive an abundance of it, more than you could have even imagined with your limited conscious mind. It is the willingness. I'm not saying that you're going to go broke trying to build your business or to create wealth. It is the willingness. And God knows your heart and knows that you are willing. Abraham didn't actually have to sacrifice Isaac, but it was the willingness to sacrifice out of obedience and being God hearing, not God fearing, but God hearing. So I keep telling you, and you've seen this over and over in Genesis, these same stories keep playing out over and over and over again. And many of these Old Testament stories are really the story of Jesus is a remix and an interweaving of all of these Old Testament stories in shorter form. Okay. And so I want to show you this T chart. This is going to blow your mind. This is Isaac, the sacrifice of Isaac and Abraham, and Jesus' crucifixion. And again, if you're on social media, you want to go to jointruthseekers.com to be able to see this. You want to go to truthseekers.com in order to see this. Okay. So watch this, y'all. The first thing we have is Sarah, the virgin. We also have Mary, the virgin. Now, in those days, virgin did not have sex yet. Virgin meant that they hadn't given birth yet. So we have Sarah, the virgin, then we have Mary, the virgin. Then in Genesis 18:2, we have 3 men come to Abraham around the period of the time of birth. We have 3 men come to Abraham. What happened in Jesus' story? We had 3 what? Magi come around the birth in Matthew 2:1. Then from there, Abraham was tempted in Genesis 22:1. In Matthew 4:1, Jesus was tempted. Literally, first verse. Jesus was tempted. Okay. Then Isaac, quote unquote, the only son, even though we know that there was Ishmael, right? John 3:16, Jesus, the only begotten son. Okay. Then Abraham saddles an ass. What did Jesus do? Entering into Jerusalem, he saddled an ass. Isaac carried wood. What did Jesus do? Jesus carried wood. Abraham lifted up his eyes and Abraham's eyes lifted up on the third day. Jesus was raised up on the third day. Abraham left lads and said, I will come again. What did Jesus do? Jesus left his disciples and said, I will come again. Abraham has a knife to cut Isaac. Jesus was pierced with a sword by the soldiers. Isaac wanted to know where the burnt offering was coming from. Jesus said, Father, why have thou forsaken me? Isaac was bound to the wood. Jesus was bound to the cross. The ram was caught in the thicket by its horns. Jesus was crowned with a crown of thorns. Abraham ultimately sacrificed a ram. Jesus is known as the sacrificial lamb. Genesis 22:8 reads, and Abraham said, my son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went, both of them together. John 1:29, the next day John seeth Jesus come unto him and said it, behold the Lamb of God, which hath taken away the sin of the world. There are a lot of parallels between those two stories. A lot of parallels between these two stories. Why do they keep coming up? What do these parallels mean? What are these stories trying to tell us? There are too many parallels for these to be actual literal stories. You're going to see Rebecca with Isaac and Jacob, with Esau and Jacob, is no different than Sarah with Ishmael and Isaac. You see Abraham approach Pharaoh and call him his sister. You see Abraham approach Abimelech, call him his sister. Why are these stories continuing to show up? What are they trying to teach us? What are they trying to tell us? So this is the journey that we are on with Metaphysical Bible Study. I don't claim to have all the answers. I don't even want you to look to me for answers. I want you to go directly to your source, your creator, whatever you call it. And I want you to seek divine downloads. Seek and ye shall find, ask, and the answer will be given. Knock and the door will be open unto you. And if you find something that is beneficial to you, we encourage you to share it in our community. We have a Facebook group where we continue the conversation throughout the week. We share our lessons as we go through these independent studies, and then we have the collective space. But the purpose of this space is not for you to come to look to me for wisdom, not for you to come to get my cliff notes from my study. The purpose of this space is for you to do your own study. And then we come here and we share what we've learned together. We go through the process of decoding together. Hopefully, when I decode, you may see something that I don't see. But I may have said a word that triggered you to see something and be able to catch something. That's the ultimate goal, is for us to really understand what these stories, these allegories, these parables, these metaphors are really all about. What do they mean for us in our lives? I don't have a ton of answers from this story. I have some insights that have blessed me, and I'm going to keep seeking. And sometimes it takes me multiple reads. Every week we encourage you to do 3 reads, but it may open up for you on the 10th read. The door, the secret may be unlocked for you on the 10th read. But the reality is that most people in most religions, they don't even read the book of their religion. Most people in most religions have never even read the book of their religion. If you read these books on your own and stop relying on a preacher to give you their cliff notes and you go directly, I think you will find things and see things and learn things that you would have not otherwise learned. You are mature. It is time to get off the milk, and it's time to start eating meat. And I don't mean that literally, just like the Bible is not literal. It means that it's time for you to eat big boy, big girl food. You are strong enough to ingest and digest the truth. You don't need any more fairy tales. And so that is my prayer for you all. That's why we call ourselves truth seekers. We're not claiming that we have the truth, but we are calling ourselves truth seekers because we are seeking the truth. And I believe that there can be multiple truths, that you will see a truth that does not apply to me, and I will see a truth that does not apply to you. All that matters is that we are on the journey and we are seeking to be in alignment with the one truth, which is God. And in this particular space, the text that I have an affinity for is the Bible, and that is the process that we are going through. So with that, our homework for the next week is actually going to be Genesis 25 and 26. We're skipping over 23 and 24, and we're going to go to 25 and 26 and get into Jacob and Esau. We're going to get into the first half of that story of Jacob and Esau. We're going to see a lot of parallels between them and Cain and Abel, right? We're going to see a lot of parallels between them and Ishmael and Isaac. And again, asking ourselves, why did this story keep coming up? Why does it keep repeating itself? And what is it trying to teach us? Sometimes in life, the Bible is not a linear book. It is not a linear book. As you're starting to see, it's cyclical. And this is why the same stories come up over and over and over again. And this is why it's called generations, these generations. We are in a spiral upwards. We are in a spiral upwards in consciousness. But as you spiral up in consciousness, you're going to come across the same situations in life, but you get to respond to them differently. This is why I believe these stories are coming up over and over and over again. We're seeing if we are able to respond to them, if the characters in the story and the characteristics in us respond to the same situation differently. So with that, again, our homework for next week is Genesis 25 and 26. You are meant to read them 3 times and do your best to decode them. Pray for insight. Pray for divine downloads before you step into the text. And join us next Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're going to decode it together. So again, go to jointruthseekers.com. Again, that's jointruthseekers.com, and join our Facebook group, get access to the recordings and the replays from Genesis 1. We've started all the way at Genesis 1, family, and we are now going into Genesis 25 and 26. This has been a blessing to share this process with you. I hope that it is blessing you, building you, and helping you get closer to your God, your source, whatever you call it, however you define it. I feel led to continue this space, and as long as it feels in alignment, and as long as I'm God hearing and God keeps telling me to show up, and I'm going to continue to show up. But again, I need you to show up. Please do not, if you've been here multiple times, this is not a place where you just show up and you kick back and you relax. This is a study. This is a study. This is not entertainment. This is a study. And in order for you to get the richness of this study, you must do the work in advance of coming to this collective shared space. All right. So with that, I appreciate each and every one of you. I wish you a blessed, blessed day. And I hope to see you next week for Metaphysical Bible Study, Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, if you're on social media, go to the pinned post which says jointruthseekers.com with an S. And that'll get you access to the Facebook group and the link to join us on Zoom next week so that you can see my actual notes. All right. Appreciate you. Everybody have a great one. Talk to you soon. Oh, for those of you in the in Zoom already in the Facebook group, please go ahead over there right now. And actually, I'll put the Facebook group link in right now. Go ahead over there right now and go ahead and put your greatest insight from today. Let me know what resonated with you, what really made, what moved you and really resonated with your spirit. If you could share that with me, that would be helpful. So I put the link in chat. So go over the Facebook group and just type some of your notes. What really hit you today? And I'll be reading those. All right. Much love, y'all. Peace.